NERO isn't a game for everyone, and that's something developer Storm and a Teacup is totally okay with. According to their website, they're all about telling stories, and with NERO, they've succeeded in creating an emotional and depressing narrative that's bound to tug at your heartstrings if you'd give it the chance. It's a strange journey through a young child's vivid imagination, a coping mechanism of sorts for the shitty hand that life's dealt. You're portrayed as a mysterious hooded figure exploring a sad and lonely world that's draped in contrasting blacks and phosphorus neons. It's the type of world that begs you to explore it, and doing so rewards you with additional puzzles to solve and snippets of dialogue to mull over. It really is a sad tale of hopelessness, loneliness, and coming to terms with our own mortality. It's a realization of just how cruel life can be sometimes, and it's fantastically told through portions of text floating around the world, in addition to some rather well voiced over cutscenes. Coupled with its haunting and whimsical musical score, there's a constant rush of emotion as more of the tale is uncovered at your own pace. Exploration really is the name of the game here, and there's no combat or action throughout the solemn adventure. That's not to say there isn't anything to do though. Puzzles exist as an optional way to further the game's narrative, but none of them are difficult enough to take away from what's most important, the story. I managed to solve all but one of them in a handful of minutes, and most of them were found off the beaten path, again rewarding exploration. With storytelling at the forefront of NERO, it's easy to draw comparisons to narrative-based games like Gone Home or Dear Esther. It's also a relatively short game, clocking in around 2 to 4 hours depending on your method of playing. You could probably breeze through the game in a little over an hour, but NERO is all about taking it slow, reading text, and partaking in some of the optional puzzles to uncover more of the story. I'll say it again, it's definitely not a game for everybody, and if that's not your thing, you'll probably want to avoid the game altogether. It's also $20, so you're going to want to evaluate your own personal length to price ratio to determine whether or not it's worth checking out at its current asking price. Graphically, NERO exists somewhere in the middle of the last console generation. Nothing about the visuals scream current gen, and combined with the awkward character animations and obvious framerate issues, I'd never peg the game for being on Xbox One. That's not to say NERO isn't visually appealing at all. Dated visuals aside, there's plenty to love in the use of contrasting colors, vibrant lighting, and the haunting environments that exist inside of this intriguing world. NERO is a really hard game to give any sort of definitive score, as it's full of technical shortcomings and it's graphically dated, but there's just something about it that was clearly good enough for me to overlook its flaws while playing. For a brief moment, I was a ghost in my room, completely absorbed by this heartbreaking tale and the fantastical world that existed inside of it. I didn't care about getting stuck on terrain, thoughtless puzzles, or the lack of action. Storm and a Teacup set out to tell a story, and that's exactly what they did. And it's one that'll stick with me for a very long time. With that in mind, we're giving NERO a 7.5 out of 10.